Fort Charlotte constituents say they want Andre Rollins out and Sayers in. I'm Clint Watson. The story's ahead in the Bahamas tonight.
Also find out why the water pressure fell over the weekend.
And then find out the next step for those striking unions. The Bahamas tonight, the National Report starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
Fort Charlotte constituents want him to go. Good evening, everyone. I'm Candino Knowles.
And I'm Opal Roach. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, Fort Charlotte MP Dr. Andre Rollins at the center of controversy once again, as this time his constituents are calling for him to vacate the seat.
Now, all order, the PLP chairman says those constituents are looking at the way forward. We get that story tonight from Clint Watson.
If the fate of Andre Rollins rests in the hands of his constituents, well, they want him out. In no uncertain terms, members of the PLP branch of Fort Charlotte met last night, inviting the party's chairman Bradley Roberts in to discuss what they view as time to take action.
They were very frank and forthright. They are fed up with their member of parliament, and they want to see the back of him. As a matter of fact, they've asked that he be recalled. I explained to them that there's no provision in the law to recall a member of parliament, and they retorted and said that they wish to have their former member of parliament, Mr. Alfred Sayers, to carry the party's banner in the next general election.
Roberts admits that Rollins' growing disapproval could impact the party's support going into general elections, and his reported absence from the community and among branch officers continues to affect the constituency. As for his relationship with the PLP,
he is in hiatus at the moment. I've referred his matter. There's been some official complaints to the disciplinary committee, and they will be meeting starting from tomorrow, and they will invite him to come and to put his position forward.
Is there a possibility he could face expulsion from the party?
Yes, that is a possibility, yes.
And should that happen, Rollins would either become an independent member of parliament or he can choose to join another party and represent them. As for the return of Alfred Sayers, Roberts says he conveyed the branch's views to Sayers and there could be a return. It's an option that Sayers supported.
Yes, I'm willing to serve the country and serve the Progressive Liberal Party. And whenever I do so, it will be done within the context of the rules of the party and the rules and the laws of our country.
And having said that, Sayers is mindful of due process and not to interfere with the sitting MP, Andre Rollins.
And I will not do anything that will injure an incumbent member of parliament. And I think that all responsible members of the party ought to refrain from any public comment so that we do not prejudice the conduct of that internal process.
Regardless of how people feel and where they stand in this issue, the power still remains in the hand of Rollins, as only he can determine his fate here at the House of Assembly. Clint Watson, ZNS Network News.
Well, a group of Progressive Liberal Party constituents in Fort Charlotte has expressed its desire to have the MP for the area, Dr. Andre Rollins, ousted. But Parliamentary Commissioner Sherlyn Hall says according to the Parliamentary Act, an MP cannot be recalled. He could, however, resign or be removed by way of death or is disqualified for being bankrupt or charged with a criminal offense. This means that there's not much those constituents can do to have Dr. Rollins removed.
All members of parliament are elected initially to serve a 5-year term. That's the bottom line. And if something goes contrary to that and something untoward were to happen, there's no provision for recall. So the MP is really under the Constitution and under the is mandated to serve the 5-year term completely, unless, of course, he or she wishes to resign. So if the elected member of parliament actually resigns, then the Governor General, the Speaker will advise the Governor General to issue writs of election for that position to be filled.
And if he does not resign against the wishes of some of his constituents?
The MP chooses not to resign, then under the Act, under the Westminster system, under our Constitution, I don't think there's not much the Speaker can do at this time to compel him to resign. That's my understanding. I'm no lawyer, but I stand to be corrected. But under the Constitution and the Act, he will have to still serve his 5-year term.
In other news tonight, a malfunctioning generator apparently caused a shortage on Saturday, leaving many residents without the necessity for hours. Water and Sewerage General Manager Glenn LaBille assures that this matter is being addressed.
At our main station that supplies 70% of the island, we were having some issues with the power coming in. There was some phase imbalance. And then our generators at the same time ended up having a mechanical problem. And so it took a lot longer than it would normally take. Normally our generators kick in within a few seconds of the power going off. But because of the type of power problem it was, it didn't kick in right away, and when we went to start it manually, we had some issues.
Well, LaBille also said that they are working to ensure that this does not happen again.
I've asked for a full analysis of what the problem was with the generator, also how many problems it's had over the past couple years, and then based on that analysis we'll decide whether we have to take that generator and replace it with a new one. And if we do, that's what we'll do.
And still on water, scores of regional delegates are in the capital for a Caribbean wastewater conference. Opening the event last evening was the country's leader, who used the opportunity to focus on climate change. Jared Higgs has more.
If there was a sea level rise of 1.5 meters, 80% of the Bahamas as we know it would disappear.
Hundreds of water and wastewater professionals from around the region and beyond converged on the hotel as Prime Minister the Right Honourable Perry Christie picked up where he left off at the United Nations, arguing that the Bahamas should benefit from the Green Fund established by the United Nations, noting that the Bahamas is a negligible contributor to the issue.
When the world promised in Copenhagen that it would have a fund by 2020 of $100 billion a year, I argued that it is entirely wrong for the world to use the usual GDP way of rating countries to cause the Bahamas not to have access to a fair share of the Green Fund that would be created.
The Deputy Prime Minister also added his personal experience bringing attention to the issue of climate change.
I had the pleasure to travel to Samoa to participate in the recent conference on small island developing states with representatives from around the world. There, we noted the serious conditions that threaten our very existence and the negative impact that developed countries have on nations like ours.
Rounding off his presentation, the nation's chief also brought attention to the fact that in some parts of the Bahamas, such as some areas in San Salvador, there still isn't potable water.
It was the island where there was a first encounter between the old and the new world in 1492. It is an island that will forever be in the annals of history. It is an island where there is a Club Med facility and direct flights from Paris to that island. But yet, when I was first Prime Minister, in one part of that island there was no potable water.
The Water and Wastewater Conference continues throughout this week, with ministers with responsibility for water from throughout the region conducting a high-level meeting on Thursday. Jared Higgs, ZNS Network News.
Well, this week, government is set to unveil its 25-year National Development Plan, which is designed to modernize the way it does business in the country. Minister of State for Investments, the Honorable Kailash Roll, made the announcement today while appearing on the ZNS TV show The Read Factor.
Now, Roll says the country is currently operating on a business plan that was developed more than 40 years ago. Noting that a business operating on a dated plan is bound to make a lot of critical and costly mistakes. He says this is why the country is in a difficult position and is finally attempting to reform a tax base that is 25 years older than it should be.
they came up with a very practical plan on the notion that water flows downhill, and you have to create a downhill scenario in Pinewood. The biggest problem with Pinewood is it's between two ridges, a northern ridge and a southern ridge, and it's low lying. The water table is high. Right. So whenever it rains, even normal or average rain, the area would flood and it would retain water. Even with the drainage, they told me that you could put 1,000 drains in Pinewood. That will not solve the problem.
Now, the head of a steering committee has been selected and those managing from the government's end have been appointed. Roll says government wanted a group with experience.
We believe that we have the solution to it, and I'm just waiting on the Ministry of Finance to confirm whether this will be done in one budget cycle or two budget cycles. And once the funding is confirmed through the Ministry of Finance, then we will be off to the races.
Well, that injunction the Trade Union Congress was seeking to get against government, which prohibited them from striking, has been struck down in the Supreme Court. Justice Ian Winder, in his judgment, upheld the previous ruling prohibiting the Bahamas Nurses Union, the Customs and Immigration Allied Workers Union, and the Bahamas Educators Managerial Union from taking industrial action. The ruling outlined that all three unions have matters pending before the Industrial Tribunal, and until such time those matters are cleared, none of these unions can partake in strike or any industrial action. The BEMU was excused from paying costs as it did not participate in the recent strike. Well, a judge has sentenced convicted serial rapist Oscar Ingram to 28 years in prison for breaking into the homes of two different women 2 years ago and robbing them, raping them at gunpoint. Justice Carly DeBethel noted that there are no mitigating factors in the case. She also cited, among other things, the violent manner in which Ingram committed the crimes and the constant fear that the victims now live in. She also noted that one of the victims has to be tested every 6 months for HIV. Justice Bethel initially sentenced the father of one to 30 years. However, she took 2 years off for time served. Well, a Defense Force officer among 6 people hauled before the magistrate's court today and arraigned on firearm-related charges. 23-year-old Marine Philip Adderley along with 22-year-old Stephen Wims were each granted $10,000 bail with 2 sureties and reporting conditions after pleading not guilty to possession of an unlicensed firearm and 5 live rounds of ammunition. Court papers showed that the duo was caught with a 9mm pistol and ammunition on Monday. The case was adjourned to October 23rd and both defendants ordered to stay away from witnesses in the case. Meantime, the 19-year-old Kendrick Riley pleaded not guilty to having an unlicensed revolver and ammunition. He was allegedly caught with the gun on Sunday. The teen was granted $10,000 bail with 2 sureties and reporting conditions. Chief Magistrate Joyanne Ferguson Pratt also formally charged Haitian national Rodney Tillian and Rochelle Hall with possession of an unlicensed 9mm pistol and 11 live rounds of ammunition. Prosecuting Inspector Clifford Daxon objected to bail, noting that the Haitian national was wearing an ankle bracelet and has another criminal case pending. Hall was granted $10,000 bail. However, Tillian's bail was revoked and he has been remanded to prison. The case has been adjourned.
Well, former Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Hubert Ingram, has been selected to lead the Commonwealth Observer Group for the national elections in Mozambique next week. The announcement made yesterday by the Commonwealth Secretary General Kamali Sharma. Independent observers will monitor the voting process, the counting of ballots, and overall results. The 15-member observer group will be in Mozambique from the 9th to the 21st of this month. A 6-member Commonwealth Secretariat team will support them.
The news is brought to you by Shell Quality Fuels.